Hi, this is Julie with Petty John Quilting. Recently, I was asking some of my Facebook friends if they use starch or what kind of product they used on their fabrics to help them with their quilt making. And I decided, hey, I should just do a little experiment and kind of see for myself. So I want to share with you what the results were of my experiment. This fabric does not have anything on it yet. So I wanted to show you just kind of the weight of the fabric, the drape of it. It's not too thin. I mean, it's just a regular cotton. For quite some time, I've used Best Press, and I really like Mary Ellen's Best Press for, I just use it as I'm going. Also, sometimes I use this Magic Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. So I like them both about the same, the Best Press and the Magic. I sometimes used Best Press and sometimes used Magic when I was making this quilt block for a mystery quilt that I started. And it doesn't look a lot different probably to your eye than the original fabric, but I can tell somewhat of a difference. I can tell that it's just a little firmer. It's got just a little more substance to it. You can tell it's not real drapey. Okay, but it's minimal, all right? It doesn't put a lot of stiffness into it. My original question that got me into this exploration had to do with starch. I have used starch before just on fabric, like a general spray over the fabric, then putting an iron down. Leslie with Leslie Quilts on Instagram, she says all the time that you need to really, really soak your fabric with starch. And what she does is that she soaks her entire pieces, lets them dry overnight, and then presses them. So she does that before she ever starts a project, and then she starts her cutting and all of the rest of the work from there. So I decided I would compare using starch in some different ways, and then I would also take a look at Terrio Magic. I have a Brother Scan and Cut, and I do a lot of work on it with cutting of fabric, and Julie Fayfan Balzer is a person that I follow a lot on that because she is just a genius when it comes to Brother Scan and Cut and a lot of art projects. And she has talked before about Terrio Magic and just how much it makes your fabric like cardstock to work with. So first of all, I use some starch, just spray over the fabric and then press it. And this is the weight I got with it. I would say it was very much like my blocks here where I used my Best Press, really. It gives it just a little bit more crispness than the original. I can feel a little more difference, but not a great deal, So it still feels very much like fabric, just a little bit weightier and a little bit more crisp than when you first bring the fabric home. I have a friend, Patricia, who says what she does is she buys her bigger container of starch and then she makes a starch mix. And she uses 60% water to 40% starch. And that's what I did here. I use this on this white fabric. And per Patricia's instructions, I soaked this and then I let it dry overnight. The result is stiffer than the red one that I sprayed and pressed, but not stiff as a board, not as stiff as some of the ones I'm going to show you in a moment. Now, I have not cut yet to compare how that's going to do with my finished quilt. I'm just looking at what the fabric is like once I've used these. Next, I used Material Magic, and I used it in a few different ways. I watched a couple of YouTube videos by Terry. I forget her last name right now. I'll try to put it up on the screen. But Terry, who was the creator of Material Magic, and she explained doing it a couple of different ways. So for quilting, she suggested using this as I was using my Best Press and my Magic and even my starch, in the lighter way of just spraying over the fabric, getting it covered pretty well, but not saturated, and then ironing. And this piece, I did that way. Now I'm going to say it is very much like the white fabric that I saturated with starch and let dry overnight. The light method of doing Material Magic, to me, was like saturating the fabric with starch and letting it dry overnight. More firm than the light bit of starch. Even more firm, well, probably about the same in firmness as the starch overnight, is the light method of Material Magic. I also did this one with the same method. It feels just slightly stiffer, and I'm not sure why. Could just be the fabric. Very much the same, just maybe slightly stiffer, and I use the same, really the same method. Okay, this was more my light method. And Terry, with Material Magic, says that for quilting, this is what she recommends. For her longer method of Material Magic is what she uses for embroidery and for other art projects. So that would be, just like I did my starch on this, is the same kind of method of saturating and letting it dry, thoroughly dry overnight. Now what Terry says though is she really doesn't suggest going that far with the drying. She says saturate it, get it fully wet, and then let it go almost dry, but still very damp, and then pressing with an iron. I took this really a step further, and it was so stiff that I had to spray it all over with water again to press it with an iron, because I couldn't even get the little places, I still kind of have them, little places where I had put my hanger, where I'd clipped my hanger to dry. They were so stiff that I couldn't even move the fabric. So I did this blue, and I did this purple. Look, it almost, let's see, it almost just stands up on its own. And Terry is also known for making fabric flowers for hair pieces, and also for 3D pieces, like a wall hanging, a quilt wall hanging, and having 3D fabric flowers to come out of that piece. And you can say, I mean, you can see this is just extremely stiff. She also suggests for embroidering with a machine, with an embroidery machine, or with your sewing and embroidery machine, that usually you take a piece of fabric and you put a stabilizer on the back of it. When you have used Material Magic to its strongest method, you can actually use this with zero stabilizer behind it to do your embroidery work. It is this stiff. So this is the very stiffest that I can show you, is the purple and the blue. That was using Material Magic saturating, completely saturating this fabric with Material Magic overnight. This will get it much stiffer than starch. So if you want something that's super duper stiff, buy some Material Magic and try it out. I couldn't get, no matter what I did with the starch, I couldn't get it this stiff, but you may not want it this stiff. So the stiffest you could get is Material Magic with a saturation and an overnight dry or an almost dry. Next, for stiffness or for firmness with your fabric would be just a light spray overall of Material Magic and pressing, not letting it sit dry. Or the starch solution, 60% water, 40% starch, and having this dry overnight. That is about equal to the light Material Magic. And if you want just a bit of firmness, just to give you a little bit of crispness, then I would suggest just a spray of starch and press, spray it, press it, or Best Press or Magic, spray and press. So these are all about the same. Saturation of starch or light touch of Material Magic, and for really super duper firm, or if you want to embroider on fabric without stabilizer, pure saturation of Material Magic. I hope that gives you a little bit to work with. Let me know in the comments section if you've tried any of these and how it works for you and what your favorite is, or if you have anything different that you would like to bring up to viewers. Thanks so much.